So this is a video about walking, which I promised a few of you, and it's a really basic one. There's loads more stuff you can find out about how to walk. And I know that you all know how to walk, you've been walking all your life, but there are better ways to walk and worse ways to walk. Okay, so we'll just cover a couple of things. The first thing is to look at your posture when you're walking and the alignment of your body. So of course we can get perfect, or whatever we might think of as perfect alignment, and then as soon as we walk we get out of that, which is perfectly normal. But let's see if we can start sort of well aligned. And what that means is having our feet parallel with each other, so that we're walking, rather than walking with our toes turned out, and therefore with sort of pressure on the inside edges of our feet, think bunions developing, and pressure on the inside of our knees, think knee pain. We're trying to walk with our feet completely parallel to the direction in which we're walking, so that your heel comes down and then the front of the foot comes down too. And we want to sense, as we're doing this, can you see, obviously I've got no shoes on, so I'm really letting my foot flex like this, the toes really lift, the heel really lift up, and a really nice stretch on the sole of my foot. Now if I had really hard shoes on, like for example, these aren't that hard, but like I've got these slipper things here, look, and they've got really stiff sole. So when I take a step, I can do that lifting and flexing, but not so much, because the sole of the foot is resisting that movement on my foot. So if possible, this is not a barefoot sort of video, but like if possible, wearing shoes that allow that flexibility and that movement. And similarly, try to make sure that you're not wearing shoes that encourage you to have to grip with your toes, like flip-flops. So wear them every now and again, out to the pool, into the garden, but don't wear them on longish walks, because that's going to be restricting the ability of the sole of your foot to really move well, because everything will be stiff and tight when you're gripping. Even a little bit of grip with the toes to hold the shoe on is not healthy for the way that your foot works. And if your foot's not working properly, that has an impact all the way up the rest of the chain. So feet, that's the first thing, parallel and nice and relaxed. And if you can, try to make sure that they're really able to move around like this. There's lots of movement. The next thing to think about is your hips. Just sort of send your hips back a little bit over your heels. So we want to have the pelvis in neutral, so neither tilted forwards or tucked under. So we want to sense that if we had the pubic bone and the two hip bones, the aces bones here at the front of the pelvis, that they are completely upright in relation to each other. They're in the same vertical plane. So they're not in front, the hip bones are not in front of the pubic bone, excuse me, and nor are they behind. Okay, so nice and upright. And then the tail just naturally drops. And the shoulders, we don't want to be walking along like this, so definitely don't walk along texting on your phone. You'll be in your kind of hunched C-shaped spine position, which isn't going to be useful, so try not to walk texting or using your phone. So that the shoulders, we're not going to force them back either, because as you can see, when I force them back, I just end up shearing in the back of my body, lifting unnaturally my rib cage up, and that impacts my ability to breathe properly. So I want to just have the shoulders soft and just comfortably taken back, but not forced back, so they feel comfortable. And ideally, you're aiming towards having your ears kind of over your shoulders. So sometimes you'll see people walking along like this with their head forwards, and that's habit, and then the body has kind of created that shape. You might need a little bit of time and practice to get that to move back. But we want to think about shifting the head back in space, so the head literally moves back and up a little bit, the chin will drop down, so that you sense the back of the neck nice and long. So that's a good place to start. And then really the next thing and the last thing I want to talk about is just about this idea that you might have heard of sort of falling forwards when you walk. So this idea of what we don't want to do, and what a lot of people do, which is sort of lifting up the foot to walk. So we're sort of lifting up the leg. So it's this action of quad action. So we're sort of almost falling forwards. So rather than pushing off with our feet, to come forwards, everything's happening from the front, we're lifting up, and that's partly a condition of being in our fight or flight, and everything at the front of the body is contracted and ready to go, which is not what we want for walking. We want to be contracting the backs. I mean, obviously this does contract a bit as you lift the leg for sure, but we want to be pushing off with our foot, with the ball of our foot. Remember I was talking about that earlier, so that you'll feel the bum contracting. Okay, so we take a step, and then we push off with this back one. So that is what propels you forwards, the push off, rather than the lift. So when you see people walking like this, it'll be shorter steps and I am exaggerating, you won't see too many people walking, you know, like bod like this, but you will see it to some extent, it'll be there. So you want to get a sense that you're really pushing off with that back foot, and as you push off, that glute will be firing. And if you're walking properly with nice, not too broad steps, but nice big steps, as you do this, can you see I've got a stretch in my hip flexor here? So I've got a nice stretch in my hip flexor, I've got the foot nice and the heel nice and lifted, so the sole of my foot is getting a stretch, and I'm pushing off, so I'm strengthening my glutes. So it's really active and really helpful. So theoretically, when you're walking, as you keep walking in this way, you won't be tightening and shortening your hip flexors, because they'll be getting a nice stretch every single time you walk. You'll be lengthening and opening through the hips. So you want to really feel that when you walk, this leg behind you and this nice stretch. Okay, so those are the two things that I'd say to think about. Think about your posture, think about how you're positioning your feet, the shoulders, the head, the position of the feet, and then think about pushing off with that back foot in order to propel you forwards. And you'll find that there's a natural alternating, so when you've got one leg going forwards, the opposite arm goes forwards, and you won't probably need to be told that, because that's just exactly what naturally happens. But you definitely don't want to be walking with the same leg, so the right leg forwards, the right arm forwards. This is not what naturally happens in the body. We've got this cross-lateral patterning, so naturally the right arm will swing back as the left leg goes forwards. Anyway, notice that in your body when you're walking next, and I hope you find that helpful.